Hi there, it's Carl again here. Just wanted to share a really honest bit of footage with you around what goes wrong and why. So here we have a Japanese maple called Shana, who I really like this one. Liked it so much I put it outside the front so I could enjoy it when I sort of drove and parked up every day. And this is what's happened to it. So the poor thing's in a really sorry state. Will it survive? Yes, I think so. There is a little bit of new growth coming through, in areas, and that's not looking too bad at all. But as you can see, the poor thing has really gone through the wars. So the question is, what happened? It certainly wasn't here. I've moved it, I've kind of rescued it. So I've just gone a little journey outside. So this is the front of my house, and we have some interesting bits I might do a video on later. But this particular, let's just go past the car. That Shana was located there. So what we have is a really exposed area. There was actually some sort of fairly tall shrubs that were along there, but they got dug up last year and leafed out okay. Cold wind in sort of end of March, etc., early April. That's what happened to it. But for comparison, this fella here, which I call Alf because it's a garnet. I mean, if you won't understand that reference, it's an old comedy programme. But that's doing really well. Why? Well, it's a bit closer to the house. The cars offer some shelter from the wind. And this particular one leafed out late, later in the spring. So that's a really good tip to start with. Some cultivars come out later. It's worth doing that bit of research if you're going to put them in quite an exposed area. Just to say that damage to the poor Shana was most definitely not to do with too much sun, because it doesn't really get sun. This is the north face of the house. So the second item of sadness I wanted to show you is the rest in peace here. That is a dead Japanese Acer, Wilson's Pink Dwarf. Did okay last year, planted it mid-season, seemed to be alright. But being it's north facing, there's quite a breeze blowing. You can probably see the plants being rustled around quite a lot. The cold spring winds just did for it really. So a bit sad, but it's all a learning curve. I think my original idea, which didn't really work, was to plant these other Japanese plants to sort of shelter, but they just weren't big enough to protect and offer enough shelter for that particular tree really. So yes, that'll be dug up at some point, but just moving down the bed here, you can see a butterfly, Japanese Acer. And while it's not exactly thriving, there's a few dead bits on the top there, you can just see that. It's doing okay. It's sort of done all right. It's starting to survive. It's gone through the spring now, so it's doing quite well. And actually, if you notice, some of the hostas and some of the plants generally, the further you go in towards that sheltered area, that's just awesome. I love that. The better it goes. And at the back here, we have an orange dream Acer, just for comparison, who in this little sheltered corner probably gets a little bit of warmth off the house, maybe to protect you from the frost. That's done really, really well. Masses of growth, masses of new growth. So what a difference, a little bit of positioning can really make. I'm just going to take you through back into the rear garden again. Hope this video doesn't upset any Acer lovers. Should have put a warning at the start really. But I just want to also talk about what causes damage and a bit of confusion. So this is an Atropoporium. Again, a very sort of commonly, easily obtainable Japanese Acer. And what you can see is some sort of damage, a little bit of, it's all right, it's not going to die, but the leaves are sort of quite dry in that way. And if we look over here as well, we see a similar thing on the top of this fellow here. So without giving too much away, because I will do a video soon of plants that like shade and protection, actually these two trees are protecting the rest of my plants over there from the wind. But I don't mind a little bit of damage. I'll take that. It's fairly modest. But you may incorrectly think that that's caused by too much sun exposure, because this is a south-facing garden. That's south. Clearly, that looks like it's scorched. But just to prove a point, we pop over here. This is also an Atropoporium. And another. And that's a Twomey's Red Sentinel. And this one here is a Sangukaku. Pops up. Again, virtually no damage whatsoever. So the big lesson I've learned this year really is that what may appear to be, I put them in the wrong location and the sun's done the damage, it's not. That is not about too much sun, it's about too much wind. And that's the real trick. You can probably see here, even it's quite not that windy today, but even so, the wind's having an effect. It's blowing on those leaves, and as soon as that drying effect of the warm breeze outweighs what it can draw out from the soil, that will cause it to burn basically. So I'm not too worried about it. This happened last year. It survived perfectly well. It's quite healthy, but I find it really interesting that it's the breeze that causes the problem. I just wanted to say that I had this massive misapprehension that a fence would stop the wind entering the garden and offer shelter. As you can see from that Acer there, which is red wine, it's not the case. That is being blown around quite a bit, as is that. If you had something really up in a, tight in a corner, you might do okay. But all that happens with these hard fences is the wind will travel straight over them, gain some sort of turbulence, and start to impact on your trees and plants and blow them around in all sorts of different directions. So you can actually buy fencing that allows the breeze to go through it, and that's really what should be used. So in effect what's happened is, in the modern environment, we don't like hedges anymore in our households and in our gardens. So there's quite a lot of wind blowing about there. Hedges are great because actually they diffuse the breeze as they come through it and slow the wind down. What happens with fences is not that at all. So I suppose my learning, and I'm definitely still learning, is that really probably a bigger enemy of Japanese Acers is very windy conditions. So I've tried to, this one doesn't seem to mind the wind, I'm keeping an eye on it. But some of these others down here in the same breeze are hardly affected. So if possibly you can put your more delicate plants further down the beds, away from that breeze, which in this case is blowing through the alleyway up there because it catches the wind quite a lot, and that offers really good protection. Okay, so I hope that's some sort of benefit. At least it's made you think differently, because again, I'm certainly still learning, but it's thinking about sun for sure, but actually it's thinking about how much wind, how much air, particularly warm air, passes over those leaves, which may cause them to scorch slightly. See this one here, it's quite mobile. It's okay, it's not too bad. We are starting to see little bits of blackening there, little bits of evidence of scorching, and I very, very much think it's because of the movement of the wind. Hope you found that helpful, and see you again soon. And if you would like to like or subscribe to the channel, that's just useful because I can focus in and do more videos on whichever the popular subjects are. Okay, take care.